Alright, so this video is probably 2 weeks overdue, but a few weeks back there was a very good jumps racing horse called Constitution Hill that had its first start on the flat at Southwell in a race made for it, and it looked very impressive, and it looked like it had a lot of natural ability over that distance and on the flat, so without any jumps away from its wheelhouse. So I'm just going to talk about that for a little bit. So Constitution Hill, for those of you who don't know, is in the argument of one of the greatest hurdling horses to ever walk the planet, pretty much. I think he's in the argument with the horse, I think Isterbrak was one back in the day, trained by Aidan O'Brien. I think there was a horse called Hurricane Fly, I think, as well. But I think firmly Constitution Hill is probably, one of the greatest hurdlers of all time. And he's one of the few horses in recent years in the UK, and I've experienced this because I lived there for 2 years. He's one of the few horses that have grabbed the imagination of the public. There's horses like Frankel, Black Caviar, horses that extend beyond horse racing, into the wider sporting world. And he's one of the most famous horses to ever come out of the UK, I think. So I think it's really important that, as I think he's a 9-year-old now, he needs to be kept, he needs to be kept safe. He can't be put in a dangerous situation. They've elected to not run him over jumps anymore. But that also means I feel like they can't run him on hard, really good to firm ground. And I think they really need to pick their races with him going forward as a flat horse. And that's partially what I'm going to talk about today, what they need to run him in, because if you saw the other day, his owner Michael Buckley came out saying that the Melbourne Cup, could be a target for him, which I think actually makes a lot of sense. I think if he went to the Melbourne Cup, it would be one of the biggest stories, in racing history. He'd be the best horse of all time to come out for a Melbourne Cup, and I think it would be bloody insane, to be honest. He's 9 years old, but if any 9-year-old can win the race, it'd be him. And we've seen, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds win. I believe Twilight Payment was an 8-year-old when he won the race. So, yeah, I think this idea of Constitution Hill running in the Melbourne Cup makes a lot of sense. But I feel like they need to run him a certain way, before that race, in order to preserve him. And also, I think, it's better to run him it's better to run him in the UK. They could send him to France where it's going to be soft ground, but I just think it's more of an occasion. And we saw it at Southwell the other week. If they run him in England, run him on these big race days. But I think they should. We'll work back here. I reckon Melbourne Cup, but it's going to be tricky with the protocols, because obviously he's a beaten up jumps horse. He's not going to be 100%. And I could see the Melbourne vets taking a bit of issue with that. And so, even if you had a perfect preparation, the Melbourne vets would probably, take issue with something in his, in his health, I guess. But yeah, I think working back from the Melbourne Cup, he should go to the Ebor handicap. It's like the main European or the main British lead-up race to the Melbourne Cup. So I feel like that's a logical option. The track might get a bit firm there, but it's the main road into the Melbourne Cup. So I think he has to go there. And yeah, it's at York as well. So it's a big race day, huge crowd, and I think that's the logical way into the Melbourne Cup for him. He could go to say Longchamp, Saint-Cloud to do those sort of 2,800 metre, 3,000 metre listed races, Group 3s. I believe the Prix Vicomtesse Viguier is the Group 1 there. I think it's at Longchamp. It's a new Group 1, but if you won that, he'd probably carry a lot of weight in the Melbourne Cup. So that might not be the most logical move. So I think he needs to do 1.5 mile, 2,800 metre handicaps throughout the year at these big meetings, like at Ascot. I think there's one at there's one at Newbury early on. There's one at Epsom. There's plenty of opportunities for this horse to run in decent flat company and he can sort of like build up to the Ebor and hopefully go to Melbourne at the end of the year. But yeah, I think it's very important that he stays in the UK, doesn't go to France. It's only a very like small minority that said he should go to France, which does make sense because he'll get a soft track virtually every time. But yeah, I think it's best that he stays at these big UK festivals and does these handicap races, and yeah, works into the Melbourne Cup. But yeah, I just think if this horse went to Melbourne for the race that stops the nation, it'd be like one of the sickest like horse racing story arcs of all time. This absolute champion hurdler. When he won at Cheltenham those 2 years. And even the storyline around, when he got pulled out and then, he came back the year after and like fell. I'm not really a jumps racing guy, but that was like out of a movie, that whole storyline. So, having that horse that's gone through all that, he's having this redemption arc on the flat, would be absolutely insane. Like we've seen good horses come out for the Melbourne Cup in the past, like Yates. I remember he was, a star at the time. I think he won a few Gold Cups. There's been countless good horses come out here. I think Yates is probably one of the better ones. But Constitution Hill is a champion. We haven't had many champions come out here. So, yeah, if he was to come here, it'd just be insane. And another thing as well, I saw on, I think it might have been Gareth Hall's Centrack podcast, or SEN Track, however you pronounce it. They were talking about this, and they had Racing Blogger on, who was obviously tooting the horn for Constitution Hill. And I forget who the Aussie person was on, like, countering it, but the disrespect that they had for this horse, like, they just have no idea. Like, this is the best horse that will ever come out for a Melbourne Cup. And, like, they were slating it, saying, like, oh, like, it's 9 years old and stuff, when... Yeah, Blogger brought up Twilight Payment, who was an 8-year-old when he won it. So, there's over these long distances, older horses can win. We saw Dubai Future win the Dubai Gold Cup and then run third in the Ascot Gold Cup last year as a 9-year-old. So, why can't Constitution Hill do it? And yeah, Constitution Hill's a way better animal than Dubai Future. So, yeah, just crazy disrespect from the Aussies. Like, I think if you know, like this horse is absolutely serious. But yeah, like because I lived in England for 2 years, I went to Cheltenham last year. I'm not really a jumps racing guy, but when the flat's not happening and there's jumps racing happening around you, you kind of get involved a bit. And so Constitution Hill is a household name over there, more than any flat horse over there, I'd say. And it's been that way for years too. Like, he's as I said before, he has absolutely caught the imagination of the whole public. And when things didn't go right for him, he was sick. He had his 2 wins at Cheltenham. He was sick the year after, and then he fell in the champion hurdle, which was just absolute like carnage. I was in a betting shop at the time, working, and like I'd never seen a reaction towards a race like it. It was just ridiculous. And then you saw State Man come down afterwards. It was just like you couldn't even write a script better than that. So yeah, it was just madness. And then obviously he's had like 2 falls after that. It's just horses are such weird creatures. Like when they lose their confidence, it's hard to get it back. So it's unreal that we saw him come back in the flat the other week and he just pissed up, and he kind of ignites that imagination side of the narrative, I guess, where could he go to a Melbourne Cup? Could he go to an Ebor handicap? And he's got like I don't think Nicky Henderson has had like very very many good flat horses, but this could be a serious horse. I get that he's 9 and he's probably past it, but the way he won at Southwell, like that's a weird conclusion to make if you think he's past it, because he won very well. Barely came off the bridle. And so yeah, that's about it for this video. Bit of a short video and a different one. But yeah, I feel like I had to talk about it because he's one of the biggest conversations in the racing world at the moment. What's going to happen with Constitution Hill. So yeah, I'll do I'll do a preview for the weekend's racing on Friday. And if you like this sort of thing, like and subscribe. Just follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you later.